Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor of Digital podcast and your host, the Doctor of Digital. For a lot of folks, they want to know what the purpose of the show is. So, of course, here I'm going to tell you. This is to introduce you to the trends in technology, marketing your message, and meet intriguing people. Did you know that social media users spend an average of 2 hours a day scrolling through their feeds? In this episode, we'll discuss the changes and hot topics to penetrate the crowded marketing field. By the end of this episode, you will know what to do, and I'm going to encourage you to contact my guest. My guest today, it's my honor to have Yuliya Gorenko, who's a marketing communications expert with over 10 years of experience in PR, influencer marketing, and communications. She worked with over 30 global brands, and she started in 2020 the Mischka Agency. So with that, welcome to the program, Yuliya. It's great to have you. Thanks for taking out some time from your schedule today.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Well, we have a number of things that we'd like to know and be very curious about your background and like to know something about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into the field in the first place?
Sure. So I'm originally from Ukraine. I am now based on the west coast of the United States. As you mentioned, I've dedicated over 10 years of my career to marketing communications.
Mhm.
My key areas of expertise include public relations, strategic communications, and influencer marketing. I've worked with a number of clients, mostly in the software space. I've worked with brands in the educational technology industry, cybersecurity. I've worked with B2B SaaS brands. And basically, I help them grow their businesses with content marketing and influencer relations.
I understand that Ukraine is actually pretty strong when it comes to these fields. Is that where you got your training and then came to the States, or how did that happen?
That's right. So I started my career in Ukraine. I actually, when I was 19, my very first job, it was an internship at an international company, L'Oreal. Probably everybody knows it's a large cosmetic corporation.
Yeah.
And then I worked there for about 4 years. I grew from an intern to the head of the PR department. So I would say it was like a big first jump start of my career.
Hmm.
And then after that, I pivoted to software. This was a crazy change, from beauty to software. Like I started to work with the geeks and nerds in the software world, and I loved it. So I'm like, okay, that's where I want to go next, and that's what I want to keep doing. So I worked for a bunch of companies, and that's how I eventually got to the US because I was hired by a US company, and I was traveling quite frequently, to do business meetings in the US. So I was kind of living in between the two countries, Ukraine and the United States, for a while. And then at some point of my career, I realized that I start to receive too many job offers. It might sound like I'm bragging, but that was the situation back then. And I'm like, why should I pick one company to work for when I can do consultant work and help multiple brands and clients? And this might sound overwhelming, but to me, it was so excited that I can learn so much, like from working simultaneously with multiple brands. So that's how I ended up actually pursuing my own consultant work in marketing communications.
I see. Now, you've been in the field for 10 plus years. I'm curious to find out what's your perspective on some of the changes that you've seen over this time because technology does change so quickly.
Um, sure. So let's talk about influencer marketing because I feel like this is my main area of specialization. I should say I have seen the industry grow and mature. When I started working with influencers, most brands back then barely even saw the value in this marketing channel.
Oh,
it, and it's a funny story because back then when I was working, for a company, I was doing PR, and uh, I was young and curious, so I started to see how like all these bloggers are popping up online,
Hmm.
and I'm like, there's a huge opportunity for brands to partner with these individuals. And I approached my manager at that time, and she was wonderful. But she said, it seems like you already have a lot on your plate. Are you sure you want to do this influencer stuff? Like, do you even have time for that? I'm like, yeah, I want to give it a try. So she's like, okay, up to you. And then I started doing it. And then, like, in 6 months or so, the management actually realized that there's a lot of value in this. And it became one of the company, like, priorities and directions that I was lucky to be leading at that time. So, I started at the very early stage where brands didn't even care. And then, yeah, I've seen the industry grow and evolve. And at the early stage of influencer marketing, um, it, influencers did not even expect a monetary compensation for their work. So the way it worked, you would just send them a free product and they
Hmm.
would post a review. And as you probably know, it rarely happens these days. Now, influencers expect monetary compensation, and it totally makes sense because for many influencers nowadays, content creation is their main job and is their only source of income. They literally put 100% of their time and effort into growing their channels.
Hmm.
So, as we see monetary compensation coming into play, the whole industry changed. It became heavily regulated. So, for example, here in the United States, influencer endorsements are very heavily regulated by the federal trade commissions. There is like a whole guide um, with how influencers should properly disclose their affiliation to the brands. And then the brands, of course, also have to be compliant. So there are a lot of these details and regulations nowadays. And again, it makes sense because if you're advertising with an influencer, you have to be transparent about it. You need to let the consumer know that they're actually seeing an ad. Uh, so, that's one major change that I want to point out. And then, of course, another aspect, because you probably heard the term creator economy.
Sure.
So, like, influencer marketing is a huge business nowadays. And there are a lot of players that are coming into this industry. So, for example, a lot of influencers nowadays are represented by talent agents or even like large talent agencies that are managing multiple influencers. And again, back in the day, this was not a thing. You would always talk directly to an influencer. Nowadays, when you're a brand, you might not even be able to talk to the influencer directly because you're dealing with their talent agent.
Right.
And then, of course, there are influencer agreements, and they are getting more and more um, sophisticated because there are a lot of moving parts. Like, for example, you need to negotiate things like content usage rights. You need to negotiate, for example, exclusivity. Like, do you want to add a non-compete clause for the influencer, etc. So again, when I look back at like what was going on 10 years ago, this was not a thing. It was just like, hey, I'm going to send you a product, you will write a review, that's it. So yeah, the industry definitely has evolved. You mentioned technology. So technology also plays a very interesting role in the influencer marketing space. There are a lot of platforms nowadays that help you in a certain way automate your influencer management. So for example, there are platforms that can help you discover influencers. So you can like search for influencers more efficiently. And then there are some platforms that can help you with outreach or even like the full management of the campaign, where you have literally all parts of it in one place. So you don't have to go between your email and spreadsheet anymore. You can just have it all organized. There is definitely some value in these platforms, but I would say, if somebody who's listening to this episode and, somebody who's maybe running a small business, I would say don't go there yet. If you're a small business, probably you can still manage your influencer program, manually, because you won't be working with that many influencers.
You're talking about the changes. I'm curious, are these some of the areas that you would say are the hot areas to be looking at, or the things that what should a person be looking at currently? Like what's
Mhm.
happening today?
Yeah. So for me, one of the biggest recent discoveries is the efficiency of TikTok. So I don't know, I'm kind of like old school in a way. So I always treated TikTok as, oh, it's just like funny videos for kids.
Yeah.
There's no way a serious brand would go on this platform. But we've done some testing for the clients that I work with, and we have one client in the cybersecurity space, which is like
Mm,
pretty serious, right?
sure.
And TikTok is not a top of mind platform for a cybersecurity company, but it turns out that on TikTok, um, there is way more, beyond just like singing and dancing
Sure.
kids, or um, or funny videos. There are a lot of people who share valuable content there, in a way I would call it educational, like how to content in many, many different niches. So a lot of people actually come to this platform to find out something new, to learn. And we see that people are very engaged on this platform. So, I mean, if you are a brand and you are still skeptical about TikTok, as I was, I would say give it a try. There are so many different talents on TikTok. And I think any brand can find a creator on this platform to partner with.
Mm. I'm curious about something you said about businesses and the size of businesses, especially in the field that you're in. What would you recommend business owners to be thinking of? And that is in terms of size and maybe their vertical. So, who should and what should business owners be thinking about in your field currently?
Yeah, so when it comes to influencer marketing and you as a business owner are considering maybe like trying it out, approaching this space, first of all, don't be intimidated. Influencer marketing does not have to be expensive. Like, yeah, we talked about the monetary compensation part that influencers expect to be paid for their work, but it does not have to be expensive. So you can find some smaller creators
Hmm.
and maybe offer them some additional value, like you would provide them access to your product or service, and still find common grounds and a deal that would work for both sides. um, Another interesting approach would be to offer influencers a commission, for example, for the sales that they generate for you. So in this case, you won't need to risk huge marketing budgets. You would only compensate the influencer, if they generate a sale for your brand. So there are a lot of different scenarios and compensation models. So you just need to define your budget and define your pricing structure, how much you're ready to invest, and then find the right people. And then when it comes to scaling your program, so here's something that I want to briefly cover. Um, a lot of brands that hit a point where they're like, okay, we are starting to work with more and more influencers, we need some help. They start to look for an agency that can help them run their program. And, I work for an agency, right? So you probably would expect me to say, hire an agency right away. Like, actually, hold on. Let's talk about influencer agencies here. If you realize that you need some help and you're looking for an agency, you have to be very, very careful, because there are a lot of agencies out there, and you want to make sure that the agency you want to partner with actually understands your brand. So, for example, are they open to take the time to understand your brand, your niche, your customer, your industry, or will they just give you the cookie cutter, their standard approach? And then maybe, you would want to work with an agency that already has a certain experience in your particular space. I would say that would be the perfect starting point. And then another thing for businesses to consider when choosing an agency, and you are like interviewing them, you're getting to know them, and of course everybody will tell you how successful they can make your brand. Ask them for actually like campaign results, like what they have done in the past, and was the return of the marketing spend positive.
Yeah.
That's the gist of it, because a lot of agencies would tell you, oh, uh, we ran a campaign for a client, and we generated a lot of views. Okay, great. Would it translate to actual like return of your investment? So these are the things I think business owners, or decision makers who are hiring a marketing agency should consider.
And when you say a business and you're in the influencer marketing field, are these small businesses, medium? What size would you say and suggest that a business owner should be thinking about an influencer? Large, small, or any particular vertical?
That's a great question. I would say influencer marketing is a proven channel to grow your business. So even small businesses
Wow.
can see a lot of benefit from it. Again, it doesn't have to be a huge program. Just find one or two impactful people
Mhm.
who are genuinely interested in your brand, who would actually love your brand and would want to recommend it,
Right.
and then build a relationship with them. So when you are a very, very small business, you just have to start very small, but you will definitely see a lot of benefit from it. When you're a large brand, I would say, all large brands that I can think of, they have robust influencer programs. They have huge departments who run this activity, and they work with several agencies. Especially when we're talking about an international company, they would hire agencies in a specific region. Like,
Right.
for example, you're targeting Turkey, you maybe don't need to work with a US based agency if you're
Hmm.
going to launch a campaign in the Turkish market, right? Like, find a local agency there. So to answer your question, I think that all businesses would definitely see value in this.
Okay.
It's just like the scale of your program would depend on the scale of your resources that you have.
Gotcha. Understood. Now, one of the things you had said, and it's true, there's a lot of people in the influencer marketing field. So, could you talk a little about what your actual expertise is? So, if a person was thinking of engaging an influencer marketing person or agency, what do you do and what kind of expertise would you offer?
Sure. So, because I come from the brand side, so I worked for corporations for a while, um, I basically know all the steps of creating and launching an influencer program. So, when I work with my clients, I usually offer them like a full service campaign execution, from strategy creation, like, hey, what kind of influencers do you need? What social platforms do you need to be on? Maybe it's podcast, like maybe you don't need TikTok. Maybe for your brand, we need to go after podcasts that are influential in your space. So all these like strategic aspects, that's what I help clients to figure out. And then of course the execution, because as we discussed, when a brand hits a point where they want to ramp up their influencer program,
Mhm.
it's very difficult for them to manage it internally. Because if you think of it, it's a lot of back and forth. You have to uh, you know talk to so many people, and there are so many details within each influencer partnership. So brands oftentimes they are looking to outsource this to an agency, and that's what I help with. That's what companies hire me for.
Gotcha. So it's fascinating. So a lot of changes we've talked about, the hot topics, what you actually can do, and who should be looking at this if you're a decision maker or a business owner. Now, I'm curious, how would people get a hold of you and get in touch with you if they've heard you and it said, yes, this is a person I need to have a conversation with?
Yeah, so first of all, I need to say that I am very open to just connecting with people. You don't need to hire me. Like, let's just talk. If you have a small question and you cannot afford to hire a consultant or an agency, that's totally fine. You can still reach out to me, and I would love to chat with you. Um, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Yuliya Gorenko, and I'm very active on this platform. So I don't think there are too many Yuliya Gorenko on LinkedIn. So I think it will be pretty easy to find me there.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time. You learned a lot, and it's really brought people up to speed on your particular field that they may be interested in. Thank you very much for taking some time out today.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun. Thank you.
Bet. Well, if you like the program, you like the show, make sure that you are liking, subscribing, and especially positively reviewing on Apple Podcasts. That helps the podcast and episodes coming your way. Until next time, this is a Doctor of Digital signing out. Deus Volt.